it's thinking about it. But
Yep, there it is. It just says. Excellent. Okay, so we're streaming on YouTube, and CTN is also on, as you can see. So welcome everyone. It's been a busy month, but welcome to October. Here we are moving forward. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes. They are attached there. Are there any questions? Well, maybe a motion to approve the minutes, then we can discuss them. Would someone make that motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Christopher. Do we have a second on that motion?
Seconded.
Who was that, please?
Katie.
Katie, thank you. Now, discussion? Any questions on that? Anything on there? All right, then, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. All set with that, Taylor?
all set.
Great. Okay. So I'm trying to put things, I know not everybody has Google, so I'm putting things in the Google folder, but also trying to send them to you. Or Taylor's doing a nice job of putting them also on the legislative website, our page there on the website. So hopefully you've been able to see what we have obtained. And Christopher and I have been in touch. So we feel like we're making some nice progress. Tanya can't make it today, but she sent me an email saying she's putting together information from the CHRO on the Kids Court Academy. She'll have that, so we'll be able to add that. If anyone else has anything to add, please do. The LEAP information that I have from last month, I've obtained more, so that will be in there. I'm also thinking, Jennifer, we can put the blue ribbon panel information on there because we didn't have it for our last year's report. So that might help us with some answers to your questions too about what we need and what we haven't covered. Jennifer, does that sound good to you? I know you're there. You just saw your picture on there. Maybe she's getting her child. Okay. And Christopher, you've been doing some work too. You want to start with some of that information to share?
Sure. Yeah. So I had reached out subsequent to our last meeting to two different groups. The first was the Connecticut School Counselor Association, because the questions that we're being asked to address pertain certainly to schools, not exclusively to schools, but certainly to schools. And having been a school counselor, I know that school counselors tend to be, pretty plugged into the various programs in their buildings, more so than teachers are able to be. So I reached out to the executive director and the president of the Connecticut School Counselor Association and put together a questionnaire just on a Microsoft form. And I've gotten 6 responses from them. The questions were, or the items were to list and describe school-based programs that their school was able to implement because of funding that the federal government provided to help ameliorate the impacts of COVID, and that should continue. I asked them to list and describe any out-of-school programs that they knew their students or their students' families were taking advantage of. That should also continue. I asked them what gaps existed between their students' existing conditions and desired outcomes, and to what extent, in their opinion, those gaps were attributable to COVID. And then finally, I asked them if there were any particular groups of current or former students who had been especially negatively impacted as a result of the pandemic. And so, the responses were pretty similar. There was a little bit of disagreement as to whether or not free lunches and breakfasts should continue uniformly. With that, I found interesting. But basically, not surprisingly, given the reports that we've written over the last several years, the kids whom the counselors identified as being the most impacted were kids who were kids who had other sorts of marginalization to begin with. So kids who were struggling with anxiety already, or kids who were multilingual learners already, or kids who qualify to receive special education and related services already, or kids who qualify for free and reduced price lunch already. So it was the kids who, or students of color. So kids who already had, some degree of marginalization were further negatively impacted by COVID. The other group whom I reached out to, because even before I was a school counselor, I was a VISTA volunteer. And in my work with the VISTA, I worked with community action agencies and Head Start agencies, because I figured, as I said before, we were asking questions that certainly pertained to schools, but that pertains to families beyond the school setting. And community action agencies serve school-aged kids, but they also serve early, preschool kids, and they also serve, kids who are no longer in school and their families. And so I reached out to them. I had a nice conversation with the executive director of the organization of community action agencies in the state. And over the weekend, I sent an email with a link to a similar questionnaire to the executive directors of the 9 statewide community action agencies and asked them to share it with the directors of the various programs that are housed within those agencies. For example, Head Start or, employment programs and that sort of thing. So as of this afternoon, I've heard from 6 of them, and their responses were pretty fulsome, sort of more full-bodied than the school counselors' responses were. But there again, it was pretty interesting that, interesting but not surprising, that the people whom they identified as having been particularly impacted by COVID were the very vulnerable folks that we were worried about when we wrote our first report 3 years ago. And so they talked about specific programs. And so, this will be helpful data when we are writing, because I think that this will sort of underscore some of the points. Alicia and I were talking yesterday, just planning for today. And one of the things that we were talking about was, for the last 3 years, we've done some pretty good work. And our initial report from 3 years ago made 30 pretty specific recommendations, a lot of which ended up getting acted upon by the state because of the federal money. There were some areas where the state had, passed legislation, where the General Assembly had passed legislation. But through the federal dollars that became available because of COVID, the state was addressing a lot of the needs that we had identified. So it seems to me, and I think to Alicia, that in this report, we'll be able to sort of do a lot of referencing of our original report. And I can't remember, Alicia, and forgive me, friends on the call, that I can't remember who sent this to us, but somebody made us aware after our last meeting of this OPM issued report, which was basically a compilation of the various programs that had received state and local fiscal recovery funds, through the state from the federal government. And, I with my old fashioned tagged all the programs that were in any way related to kids. And a lot of them were the kinds of things that we had talked about in our original report. And some of them are programs that have been cited in the data that I've collected so far. So it seemed to me that we could sort of underscore the recommendations we had made and share what we had heard from these folks about, how they had made use of the programs or where they thought certain programs had fallen short, that sort of thing.
Irene was on the call or was on the meeting, but she seems to be having some difficulties, so I don't see her back again. Mark from the Department of Labor, did you have anything else to add?
I think from our perspective, and especially around the pandemic, and one of the things that we focused on through our youth employment programming through that time period, especially with the age group, high school age group youth, was a lot of focus around food security, for food insecurity, and mental health concerns and the impacts that those youth were feeling, based on the changes in how their school days were, impacts from even from their own ability for going into employment opportunities just because of all the fear around the pandemic. So there was definitely a focus from from us in terms of how we were going to interact with those youth and what types of supports we were going to provide them. So it sounds like what you're finding out through some of these assessments and surveys is really what we dealt with during the pandemic time period.
Yeah, and I don't
Would-
think they're over. Go ahead, Christopher.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask Mark if he wouldn't mind writing that in an email and sharing it with us, because then we can sort of draw from that when we're writing up the report. Nothing fancy, an
Absolutely.
email's fine.
Yeah,
Even the back of a donkey's napkin will suffice.
Take a picture.
Okay.
Right. Anything that we have, because this report, we can link so many things that we've already done and just, extrapolate from them or refer to them, and keep these things going. I mean, you just mentioned, Mark, the mental health, and I know the state's put, out 2 rounds of grants to help fund personnel for schools. And I think those have been very well received. It's the issue that we were talking about with, the subgroup that we had last time. And Mark, you were on that one with me that, looking forward, what do we do after those grant monies run out? Because I think that these issues are still there. You yourself, you still go to the grocery store and it's still very expensive. So that food insecurity, I think, is still there. Maybe not the same way it was, but there's still, I think it's still out there. And what people are buying, is it really nutritionally what children should be eating? And or is it cheaper things that are on sale that they buy? And then are we still having food security problems? So I think putting those in, or whatever you have information or data, that would be great. Anyone else that we didn't hear from last time? Or is anything else to add? We did put in, and you can look in that folder on, again, the state legislative website page for us, or the folder that I created in Google, and we're putting things in. You'll find those documents there, and make sure you can add to those documents in Google again, or send them to Christopher or me, or I will put them in both places too, if you do have anything already. It seems that we're not having to really recreate the wheel here, just to be sure that we're putting it together in the format asked of us, so that we can show that there are still needs, and we want to be sure we include your needs, or whatever your department's needs are, what you've already ascertained. It probably already said, but we can just put it together again to reemphasize that importance, and be sure we include all that information in our report. Christopher, go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll just say we talked about maybe going through the recommendations from the last report. Did you want to say anything before that, though?
Well, I was just thinking, yeah, I think going through the recommendations is what we need to do, but I was also thinking that they specifically, our charge, if you go back and reread it, is the General Assembly asking us which programs have been funded through these federal dollars that should
Yes.
now be funded through the general fund.
Right.
Right. And so I think one of the things that we're going to have to address is in this report is the guardrails. Because, the state is assuming good intentions and assuming that they were asking us to get back to them with something that they want to act upon. I think, it will be helpful to us, or important for us to, underscore that, that's going to have to be sort of the first thing that they do in order that they can address these needs. So I don't, hopefully nobody has objections, to including some language to that regard. Just because I think it's necessary. Otherwise, they asked us to do a task that they already have told us, isn't
Right.
a doable one.
And we'll show, like we have in the last two, with the last two reports, we'll show people hopefully some form of a draft next month. And then again, the beginning of December, so that we can submit it prior to the end of the calendar year in the session if we can. That's what we're aiming to do, right, Christopher?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful that we've got both Taylor and then after the
Christian.
election, we'll have Christian back. Because
Yeah.
I think two of the bodies, even though we were impaneled, even though our committee of cognizance is the Children's Committee,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna want to make sure that our report gets both to the Appropriations Committee, with Representative Walker and Senator Austin, but also to the Finance Committee. Because they're gonna have to be doing, they're gonna have to be determining how large the pie is before Appropriations Committee gets to decide who gets which portions of the pie, so.
So I do have the report, our final report from 2023 up on my screen. What do you think, Taylor, about giving me co-writes again, so that maybe I can put that up on the screen for everyone?
I would love to.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Let me see here where. Let's see if I can get the right links up here. There we go. Can everyone see the recommendations?
Yep.
Great. All right. So I'll make them a little bit larger here if I can. There we go, so people can. This document is in that folder too, that shared Google folder. And of course, both of our reports are on the legislative page on the website if you wanted to go there. So we had talked about, well, Look at Healthy is the first one that we had, looking at medical, dental, social, emotional health. We were just talking about this. So that was addressed, and now it's a matter of how we're going to continue the same thing with our H2 and H3 that we said we had really covered, and H4. So the green again was that we thought they had done a good job of covering this. I think now it's looking at the maintenance or ongoing funding of. I think that was it. No, here's one. So here's when this wasn't done. Oh yes, remember this one, looking at how people paid for the reimbursement case, treatment deadlines. I don't know if anyone has anything to add about this that's new, or if anyone knows, that's anyone's purview.
I know that the Transforming Children's Behavioral Health group has been meeting for like a year and a half now. So we can get some information from them. I know Senator Marr and Representative Exum are co-chairing that committee, so we can reach, and they're working with the Tao Institute over at the University of New Haven, so we could reach out to them to see. I don't know that they've made any formal recommendations yet because they're still doing their data gathering. But if they have any initial literature, I can ask for that we can include.
Well, reimbursing for Medicare and Medicaid has always been very difficult,
Right.
very laborious, and some people don't even ask for reimbursement because it's that laborious. So,
Well, and one of the things that came up, because I remember hearing Alice
right.
Forrester talking about it at a TCB meeting, was how Connecticut is notoriously behind in terms of increasing its Medicaid reimbursement rate. So it's not only that it's slow, it's that it's like woefully inadequate. And I know they were talking about it, about making recommendations for increasing it, So that's something that I could see what they've
Sure.
ultimately determined.
But the percentage is so small and you spend so much time on paperwork, you have to think about, it's a really cost effective to even ask for it.
Right.
So yeah, that would be important. Okay. Anyone else, please chime in. 7, we thought we had addressed. Yeah, the licensure and renewal, that came up too. That was on that spreadsheet that Taylor sent to us that is ongoing. So H7 there, so we can look at that and maybe make sure we're addressing that because it was addressed through the funding, but I don't know where it stands now, if they're going to change that rate or not after we're done with the funding that we have now from the federal government. Okay. Wellness, nutrition. Yeah, I would think that, I mean, I think it's a national discussion, Christopher. We're talking about the reduced and free lunches, and having that universal free lunch was such a wonderful opportunity for our students, as some states picked up on it. I know it's a lot of money. I think that really would be one way to be sure all children get a great meal at least once or twice, because if you have the breakfast program, that'd be twice, 2 out of your 3 meals a day. But we'll look at what we see for data then and
Mhm.
talk about that. Yeah. Okay, what's next here? Employers with employment opportunities. Anything with that, Mark? With H10 or 11? That you know of? Or if you find anything, you can get back to us too. I think, Mark, you're maybe muted.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, I think we're really constantly just trying to get the word out to employers to work with us in terms of providing opportunities in all different ways, including through work-based learning, through school systems and any opportunities with pre-apprenticeship to just increase employment opportunities and better connection to employment and careers for all students.
Yeah. So do you think though it's more about just participation that's needed versus more funding to enable that participation? Is that what I hear you
Well,
saying?
there's a lot of employers out there who participate without any funding. So they're willing to give opportunities because they see the value in sort of educating students in various ways. It helps them with certain time periods. And
Sure.
so for instance, in the summer, they will look for certain students, but even throughout the school year, the connections with the technical high school system, and providing work-based opportunities for youth who are going through and looking at the trades, for instance, their employers are in tune with the idea that if we provide some experience and education on what these occupations are, it does help make decisions for youth later on in what direction that they want to go in. So it's a balance. So funding helps in some instances, but there's a lot of employers who already embrace the notion of providing these types of opportunities.
That's good. Good to hear.
And I should emphasize too, Mark, and you weren't, I think, in the group when we did this years ago. We weren't thinking just about certainly youth employment for sure, but also about employment opportunities for families, single parent families who had childcare issues. I mean, there was just the whole sort of panoply of making sure that accessible employment was more available to everybody so that they could do what they could to get their families better situated economically and otherwise.
Alicia, do you mind just scrolling up to H9, I think it was?
Okay.
Was that on the Yep,
Nutrition, yeah,
nutrition. I can follow up with our nutrition folks on this.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. I'll put that in a little note, Christine. All right. Yeah, the childcare and preschool, that will be for the, again, the Blue Ribbon Panel report. We can refer back to that. Homelessness. This is, again, Medicare, but this is about more the therapeutic part, but that can maybe be the same discussion, Christopher.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Okay, now the next part is being safe. Again, here we have housing and we have information from there to keep this going, that discussion going. Again, that's the same thing with that one, I think. We did get information, so. Let's see here. Mentoring. Transportation.
Some of what we heard from in the data that I've collected so far addressed
Yep.
after school programs.
Okay,
So
what do
I'll
they
make
say? What are they saying, Christopher?
that they want them to be able to continue. I think it was the school counselors in particular were aware of opportunities that their students had now had because of the money, and they were
Okay.
thinking that they should continue.
Well, again, that does affect the whole thing again with back to Mark and the jobs too, because if I have to have a place for my child to go after school so that I can keep working, then that program would be helpful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Engaged. Well, this will be ongoing, but there's some data there. Great. Educators. Work done here. Again, with our certifications and renewals. I mean, I think families know now that they get mental health days for their children at school and that they have access to some of this more free care. I know more of those school-based health centers are opening up too, which help families to be able to access. And those grants, I think they want to continue. So
Yeah, some of that money is ending, which is really
okay.
that we've had CDC funding that ended in June, and we have some ARPA funding that's ending in 2026. So
Okay.
that really will be a huge hit to the school-based health center area for sure. We continue to get state funding, about 10 million. We fund 90 sites through DPH. That will continue. That's every year. But the two other large pots of money will end, and sustainability is definitely an issue.
I know, Christine, looking at working with the community health and wellness, they are so excited about what they've opened up that they want to keep it going after. So I'm hoping that that happens with some other groups that have helped to work to open up some
Yeah,
school centers.
billing is key to keeping sustainability, and billing rates are often different among who's providing the service, such as a community health center gets much higher rate than like a nonprofit. And so it's not easily easy for some folks to keep the doors open.
That makes sense. So how many sites are you worried about that are?
In our first CDC grouping, we had about $12 million. So we distributed out to just over 100 places. And those were either new sites or they were expansion of already existing ones. So, so that's one thing. And our ARPA funding, we were able to fund over 50 sites, which are either new sites or expansion of current sites. So it's not 150 sites per se. That's why I say it's expansion on some.
Right.
But yeah, that's a lot of services that.
Yeah.
Could you throw that on the back of a Dunkin' napkin or an email or something?
I can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Excellent.
I think including that piece about the billing, because I think that's,
And not only, a problem with all this funding is the workforce is
Mhm.
also very limited. So the money coming in is fantastic, but the work, there's all these positions and not enough providers. And that's not just school-based health centers, that's just across our whole healthcare system. So, you know, well-trained and educated providers and, some places have more competitive rates than others. So staffing is always an issue.
Yeah. And that's true too. Another part.
Especially since the pandemic, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Mandating for schools. Therapeutic capacity, professional development. Job training and development. Then we get to supported. Looking at diversity, people. Again, social, emotional. And then challenged. The whole preschool is back to the blue ribbon panel. We can refer to the extensive work done by that group with Jennifer on there. Community college work. And Christopher, you have some information on that too, you said we can look at. And this one too.
yes, yeah.
Yep, that would be great. We'll put that in. Childcare, that's all part of that report. Again, the blue ribbon panel has a lot of information there. Multi-language learners, disabilities, again, young children, Office of Early Childhood, and none of Christine. I think Christine got back on. I mean, I'm sorry, Irene, but Irene might have some information on that too. But here we go. There's the blue ribbon panel work again. And I think that is, yeah, those are all of our recommendations now from our latest report. Let me get out of here now. Let's see how we can do. Where am I? Stop sharing. Okay, so now we're back. Anything that anyone saw there or wanted to see there that we want to continue to look at or look at some more? Look at definitely. Again, if we think that with the spreadsheet and the funding that we know Taylor shared with us, I think we can pull together a nice report and maybe ask you if we see any spots in the middle that we're not sure about or any gray area.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea you came up with about looking at what we had previously written, because you're right, like some of those did get funded, but now they will be not funded again.
Yeah.
So
I know they were green, but now wait a
yeah.
minute.
No,
it's-
yeah. And I sent you that OPM list, so I give
Yes,
you a lot of
okay.
credit for looking through all that.
Oh, thank you I apologize. I couldn't remember where we'd gotten
Yeah,
it.
I thought it was
Yeah,
huge. It's a great report. It really does. And it elaborates on the individual pieces. So it gives us some
Yeah.
more information to refer
Like the
to.
progress of each
Right.
one. Yeah, yeah.
Right. That's good. That's excellent. All right. What else do we have to talk about? I mean, I thank everybody again for sharing what they have, because that really helps us to pull this all together, and then we'll get the information. I'm sure you'll get a few more respondents, Christopher,
Mhm.
to help, with that. You just sent it out because you just were able to meet with the group not too long ago. So
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
And as I say, people were pretty generous with their time and responding. So there's some responses I have to keep scrolling to read, which is great. So that's helpful information to sort of flesh this out for the legislators.
Right. Excellent. Anyone else? Anything, Linda, that you wanted to add? We missed you last
I
month.
was just, reminded when Mark was talking,
Yeah.
during the pandemic and now we have a lot of young adults who just constantly bring up that transportation to their post-secondary education and then the job training. And it never fails to amaze me how much of a challenge that is. So when we gave out emergency monies and we had some of that through ARPA, the bulk of it went for transportation issues for young adults just to get back and forth. So it's just something that's always in the back of my mind. And I can't really figure out why it takes so much effort for young adults to be able to get place to place, but it's so important to them. So I just wanted to keep that on.
That's a big deal. I know we used a lot of money for transportation for our summer school program because people wouldn't get their kids there if we didn't have transportation. So I think especially in some of our more rural or remote areas, there's no other way to get children there. And these opportunities they really need. They need the ongoing education. They need those workforce opportunities. So yeah, I think putting that in there is a good idea. Yeah, thank you. Anything from
Can
Demis,
you put
Mark?
that in an email?
Yeah.
Linda? Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting.
That's right.
I'm trying to catch up. Hey,
Sure.
just a couple thoughts, but one is, I'm not sure if it's related, but when you talk about the educators and workforce and recruitment and retaining, there's this big issue around, there's their pension plans are there, but then there's the Social Security issue. And I'm not sure if that directly relates. There's young people who are learning more and more about this and the retirement, and people are thinking more about retirement now than I think, in the past, and are trying to plan when they're younger, or at least try, it's being promoted more. So I'm not sure if it relates or not, but the recruitment for educators, I just personally seeing it because my family's involved in it. It's a challenge, and it's hard to get more teachers and school counselors. They want to go somewhere else where they have more of the benefits when they retire. So.
And I know there was a bill last year again trying to look at that issue, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't make it through, It
Yeah.
seems that there was some kind of agreement, my understanding is, Mark, back in the 1950s, that there was, that trade-off, and it still seems to be kind of the weight that holds the current method in place.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't think people are going to let that die. I don't think the Teachers Association, they're going to keep bringing it up too, to try to help that, and we can see if we can work that in somehow too. Yeah, to what we're doing. So that's the reason you think why we have sort of a dearth of people in those fields.
I think it's part of it. Absolutely, personally seeing some of that. Yeah, and people leaving as an educator because of it. They get out sooner than they should. They don't put in the 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. So not even the longevity. They might stay, but not have the job, and not for the length of time that you really need when you really develop and can use those services. Yeah.
I think we personally see, and a lot of educators would stay for 30, 40 years. My family and, siblings and just other relatives and friends that are in the school system, they're not staying that long of a duration, so it's just kind of more on a personal level. But a bit of a question as well as the H6 and payment reimbursement issues.
Yeah.
Is this where an outpatient clinic actually has a site on the school, in the school? Is that what this is referring to?
I think that one originally was just, no, if you have services for your students, sometimes with disabilities, and you want to get the funding back from Medicare or other places, that I think that's the one, isn't it? I don't have it in front of me again. I think that's what we were talking about. Does that make sense, or no? Am I wrong? Anybody have it up there again? I can go back and look.
Payments, reimbursement issues for pay-for-service in-school setting. Statutory language allow 5 sessions before parental notification.
Yeah, then you get a percentage back there if you file paperwork. But when I
Okay.
say it's laborious, I mean it's a huge packet, and when you get, I don't know the percentage, but like 10% back or something, it really wasn't worth it because the amount of time the effort you put into having to do all the paperwork, and you have to get parents to sign off on certain things that people said, we're not doing this anymore. And maybe somebody else on the call on the meeting here has more information. I don't know.
I feel like this was something that Alice was talking about,
Yeah.
too, because, Alice is the CEO of,
It's CCBHC or something.
Yeah.
oh, my brain just went away.
He's from Clifford
Um,
Beers Clinic.
Clifford Beers, that's the
Clinic.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
And I think she was talking about a lot of the Clifford Beers has, clinics in different schools.
So this would differ from the school-based health center.
Yes.
You're talking about school-specific staff, and yes, they can bill for services and get reimbursement, but yeah, the paperwork for things is insane.
Yeah.
And
what's
like you said, the rates aren't even
Right.
worth it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you really calculated how much time you took to take it and how
Mhm.
much you had to pay those people for those man hours, it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And I think Alice probably had to survive with their foundation on that, and it was really difficult for her. And that for us, it was just like, well, we can't do it. And we would tell the boards of ed that it's just not, not feasible, really, unless they want to hire someone just to do this for the pittance that we would get back. My word, not anyone else's.
I just know working closely with DSS and DCF, and in fact, I really help monitor the enhanced care clinics.
Yep.
And so there's been a expansion. Probably came out of, I think, her DEI committee that was recently added under the Oversight Council. So she has probably firsthand knowledge of this because she also operates a clinic, that there's been expansion around these school-based sites. So there's a lot of providers who are applying to open up a satellite in the school system. So there is this push. There's been this expansion over the last couple of years to expand into the school systems. So I just happen to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's a little different than this, though. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but they're both important,
Yes.
right? Anything Department of Agriculture, Kaylee?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute.
That's all right.
So I've just been monitoring sort of where we are. I know when we changed directives, they fell pretty far outside of the purview of the Department of Agriculture. And then as far as other directives or recommendations we had made, the increased access to the Farmers Market Nutrition Program was directed in, I think it was 2448, it was House Bill 5003. And so we've been working with the Department of Social Services and the Department of Public Health on those initiatives. There was some funding available for nutrition initiatives in that bill, and that is to increase the electronic benefits that we've transitioned over to at our farmers markets and expand that program. We did have a federal grant that covered the purchase of those tablets and the Wi-Fi for that. So we'll be extending that. And we have broken our records for redemption on our farmers market nutrition program. And they run through the end of November.
That's great. That's good work.
And they run through the end of November because money's running out, or?
No, farmers market season runs through
Right.
30th.
So will it continue into the new season?
So the tablets and the products that we've already purchased are owned by the department. We loan them out. There are some that we've purchased for specific farmers markets, certified farmers markets, and those will remain with those markets. So we have the devices. The transition over to electronic benefits is being done through the WIC and the seniors program. So they either get an electronic benefits card or it's in their mobile app. So we no longer have to use the paper vouchers, and that made it really easy to transition. It also allows us to track redemption rates by town, by day, by market. So every day we're able to update, whereas before we were waiting for farmers to send in their vouchers for reimbursement, and sometimes they'd wait until the end of the season or just when they had enough because they're $3 vouchers. So our typical season for farmers markets runs through November 30th.
Nice.
Yeah, very good. Katie, anything?
So no, I mean, after last meeting, I had sent you our annual
Right.
point in time count figures, which is a count of how many households are experiencing homelessness in Connecticut every year. And unfortunately, those numbers since the pandemic have been increasing,
Mhm.
as I'm sure all of you are aware. And as well as data about students experiencing homelessness and that impacts on their education, the absenteeism rates and graduation, as well as the Dalio report, which offers information about disconnected youth who are not connected to employment and education, given that these are factors that highly increase the likelihood of experiencing homelessness in their adulthood. And as far as COVID dollars, I mean, we used a lot for just the basic infrastructure of our homeless system. So we'll definitely feel that impact. And we've also been using it for folks outside of our system, like at-risk families, et cetera, through our Unite CT program. So that's like our eviction prevention fund, our security deposit program, and our workforce rental assistance program. So those will all go away soon.
And are you looking to have those continue some funding?
We do not currently have the funding now to continue them.
Yeah. And is that something that you want to include in this report to ask for?
It would be great to continue those programs. Are you, so I understand that you have the report, like we all report to OPM about this funding. You have the master list of
Yes.
all the funding that the agencies have. So do you want us to, are you posting that onto the Google, the shared drive?
Should
And-
already be there. The report that we
there.
got, like
Okay.
Christine, yeah, you should see it there, because that's one that Christopher mentioned that he has all tabbed there, and I was reading online and making notes. So yes, and that's going to be a great basis for what we do. So anything that you wanted to add, and as I was saying, in the past, any other kind of stories you want to add that, share how important this is, I think that would enhance what we're saying, just not just the need, but having those examples. And a lot of the reports that you've shared have those in those. So if we report to them, I could even pull some of those information pieces out, even though we link the whole report, just so that it has some kind of an impact beyond just numbers that relates to people and actual experiences. So that would be great. Thank you. I see Irene's back. I don't know if she's got a stable connection now or not, and you wanted to add anything if you're able to, or ask anything, Irene. If I don't hear
Sure,
you. But good.
yeah. Okay, great.
Great.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. I did want to add, I'm not sure if we're all aware, and I can certainly share a follow-up link. We have created at the department a homelessness dashboard through our EdSite portal, which gives us really just-in-time important data about all of our learners that are experiencing homelessness. So I think that's an important dashboard to share. As well as we did a presentation, the commissioner did a presentation on the Dalio report where we really got behind the numbers. And I think more of the story behind those numbers might help our
Yes.
work. So I'd like to share that PowerPoint as well, because it really does unpack the numbers,
Yeah.
that whole aggregate down to the learner. So I'd like to share those two links with you.
That's perfect. So the ed site is not the ed site secure, it's just regular ed site, so anybody could look at it?
This is public. Yep. I'll
Excellent.
send you the direct link. But yes, if you go to EdSite on our homepage and go to overview, you'll see the homelessness dashboard.
Excellent. Yeah, I think putting that information there, and again, it ties over different agencies, so that really helps. And
It does.
yeah, that's really great. And we were talking about, I'm not sure you're able to hear, but the LEAP information too, I know is really strong. So
Yes.
I have that to put in there. So I think all that will help to say the work that we're doing needs to continue. To keep these programs going, keep the data going in the right direction. And if not, we need to keep looking at, reasons why, but to cut some of these programs now would certainly have an adverse effect.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And
Thank
if we want to certainly, and I think our November meeting, I could ask Kari Sullivan, who's been the lead, our point lead for the LEAP program, if you'd like her to just share some highlights and updates with the group here.
I actually talked to her. So
Okay, perfect.
yeah, I did
perfect.
call her. She gave me some great information that I can share. So yes, she was very reactive. She called me right away. So I do have that information. But thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for offering.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, she's a
Yeah.
great resource. Yes. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Irene.
Anyone else? I think we asked everyone just to make sure we checked in with everyone here. All right, so we'll do the best job that we can putting together a draft of sorts for next meeting, so that you'll be, I'll give it to you in advance if you can. If not, we'll have that month in between to be able to look at too, if we can't give it to you too much in advance, to be able to add and anything at all, you're really good at being able to look at, and you can add or edit anything that we write because we value that impact. We need your information. Your hands on the ground with this information. We want to make sure that we don't not include anything that you want us to include, that we do include those things that are important to all of us here and your agencies and departments. Anything else, Christopher?
I think that's it. I mean, I think there's a lot of information. I think we have a solid plan for going forward, and all the little bits and pieces that folks are going to email will be really helpful.
Yes, and thank you for those who already have given those to us. So we have 2 more meetings right now slated. November 6th, Wednesday, 3 to 4, and then December 4th. At that December 4th meeting, we hope to finalize. So those 2 meetings would be important if you're able to attend, because we will be looking at all that you've shared with us and getting your input to be able to move forward. All right, then, if nothing else, then I think we can adjourn the meeting. Right? Sounds
think
good to
so.
everyone? Yes?
Thanks,
Right.
Alicia, and thanks everybody for your input. We really
Yes,
appreciate it.
thank you, everyone. Have a great month, and we'll look forward to seeing you then next month. Thanks again. Bye now.